Joining me now is Ron Brownstein, CNN senior political analyst and senior editor at The Atlantic. We have Caroline Heldman, Democratic strategist and professor of critical theory and social justice. Also with us, Lanhee Chen, former public policy director for the Republican Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign. Thanks to all of you for being with us, a bit like old days. So, Ron, I'll start with you. If this margin of Newsom to win if it's as big as those exit polls now suggest, when he sits down at his desk on Wednesday to write out thank you cards, should the first one be to Donald Trump for giving him something to run against, and the second one to Larry Elder for making that possible by claiming to be further to the right of Donald Trump?
Maybe reverse the order. Look, what the recall got on the ballot by mobilizing discontent in the most conservative parts of the state, particularly to Governor Newsom's tough measures on lockdowns in response to COVID last year, all punctuated by his ill-fated decision to go to French Laundry. They were never able to expand beyond that. And as Larry Elder became the face of the recall and kind of the personification of the recall, it probably folded in on itself even more. And what Newsom was able to do in the final weeks of the election was really bring the whole campaign full circle. It got on the ballot because conservatives didn't like his response to COVID. He won going away because he was able to convince the broader electorate that the Republicans represented a threat to the health of the state by opposing mandates for masks and vaccines. And I think, obviously every state is different, but there was a clear lesson here that Democrats can lean into this contrast, mobilize their base, move a lot of independent voters, and leave Republicans kind of isolated by emphasizing the, quote, rights and choices of the unvaccinated at a time when 3/4 of Americans are vaccinated, and those who are increasingly exasperated with those who won't get the shot.
Well, Donald Trump issued a statement, I think it was last week, baseless claims about a rigged election. We also heard from Larry Elder, who's been talking about a landslide win in this recall. That was quickly followed by talk of voter fraud. Listen to this.
So many people are going to vote yes on the recall. There won't be any question about the outcome. I just hope my opponent is willing to accept the results when he loses. I have every hope that this election is going to be free of fraud, and it's going to be one of integrity.
So, Caroline, not only did Newsom get to run against Trumpism, but Trump seemed to be working to suppress the Republican vote in a way by declaring the election rigged. Is this now sort of a winning formula for races beyond California?
Well, it certainly wasn't in this particular race. And I think, as Ron pointed out, this is a state where if you're going to put down Trumpism, this is the state to do it in. It's 2-1 Democratic registration over Republican registration. But what was particularly kind of unnerving was that Larry Elder, even in his concession speech, didn't actually concede, right? And he's been a big proponent of the big lie, right? The idea that the 2020 election wasn't free and fair. And it really, they didn't inspire the January 6th violent insurrection. We don't want that in California. But more importantly, this is the Republican strategy, and it's eroding our democracy. Our belief in free and fair elections is fundamental to actually having a democracy that is functioning.
Lanhee, how's this strategy of sort of claiming election fraud ahead of every major vote going to work when the Republicans actually win one?
Yeah, it's not. Quite frankly, I think, unfortunately, trying to look at the electoral process and trying to figure out ways to sow doubt, I don't think is a great long-term strategy for the Republican Party or for any other political party for that matter. I think the focus really has to be on how you expand the appeal of the message and the appeal of the policy prescriptions. And that really is kind of what happened tonight. I think Ron hit the nail on the head when he said, listen, the coalition necessary to come together to recall Gavin Newsom, the numbers just weren't there. You can't win in California with just Republican votes. I think that's got to be part of the formula. But to be successful, you have to really reach out and be more than that. You've got to be able to demonstrate that you can put together a coalition that's more than just the 24% of Republican voter registration in the state. And I think in this situation, that simply didn't happen.
And Ron, if we look across the country, this sort of election denialism, it seems to be in full swing. And it's unique right now to the Republicans, not just in California, but in other states where recounts are underway, that sort of stuff. Will it always stay with the Republican Party, or will it spread in a way across the political spectrum?
Well, look, right now it is centered in the Republican Party, and it is very much a kind of product of what Trump has done. something like 60% of Republicans in the CNN poll that was released this week, the national poll, said that believing the election was stolen and that Donald Trump was the real winner in 2020 was an integral part of being a Republican. Half of Republicans in another poll by Monmouth University this month described the January 6th insurrection as legitimate protest. And we see, we see this being moved into action in state after state with Republican legislatures and governors passing laws making it more difficult to vote and increasing the opportunity for partisan manipulation of the vote counting. And that, John, that is why Democrats face an absolutely existential choice over the next few weeks in the Senate. They introduced today revised legislation to create a nationwide floor of voting rights to protect the independence of election administration. All the Democratic senators are likely to endorse it. And the question will really come to a head in the next few weeks. Will they give Republicans in the Senate a veto over that, or will Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema allow them to reform the filibuster in a way that allows them to pass this? No more consequential decision over any of the policies they face through the 2022 election.
But we look at Larry Elder as a candidate. He's a climate change denier. He opposes gun reform. He's against the minimum wage. He says he wouldn't have voted for the Civil Rights Act. He opposes abortion as well. So, Lanhee, while he's not exactly representative of Main Street, California, is he representative of Republicans in California?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be the question that we're going to see the answer to, I think, as we move toward 2022 in California. Certainly, the dynamic of the Republican Party is one that, to be competitive, again, I think the candidacies of people who are running in California as Republicans have to be consistent with where the state more broadly is. Now, obviously, you're not going to have a 100% matchup because, after all, Republicans aren't progressives. But my point is, you have to understand how much of this is driven by the need for candidates who, yes, have a message of reform, yes, have a message of change, but also understand the unique circumstance of running in California. And running in California is still going to be different than running in other parts of the country. And the recognition, the quicker that recognition comes, I think the sooner the Republican Party and Republican candidates in California become more competitive.
And just lastly to you, Caroline, how much does this win by Newsom, which was a huge win when you just look at the pure numbers, how much does this now help Joe Biden when it comes to his battles, when it comes to mandates for masks and vaccines?
Well, I think it is a national referendum on this, right? That the Democrats can go out nationally if they want to run on this. It doesn't matter where they are in the country, that this is a winning platform. And I think for Newsom, the wind is at his back. There's a whole get out the vote effort that the union spearheaded that really had an impact in this recall election. That's set up not only for his next campaign, but perhaps getting back some of these California seats in 2022. And I can imagine this being the playbook for what Democrats do in 2022.
Caroline, thank you as well. Ron Brownstein and Lanhee Chen. It's good to see all of you. It's been a long time.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Take care.